After sweeping across Europe, bird flu is back in the UK. The British government confirmed the outbreak of the H5N8 strain on a farm in Tetney, Lincolnshire. However, fears are rife that cases could spring up elsewhere in the country. Amid complaints not enough is being done to ensure bird keepers are observing a 30-day quarantine.
A nasty virus is spreading around the Bay Area right now. Hand, foot, and mouth disease can mean days of misery for you and your child. ABC Action News reporter Lauren Rosella is taking action for you tonight with the red flags that you need to see a doctor right away.
We now know about at least one outbreak at a major daycare here in Tampa. Parents will be able to recognize the blisters on their kids' hands, feet, and mouths. But doctors say there are a few things that you can do to make your child more comfortable. It was weeks of misery and canceled plans for the Casera family.
The doctor tells you that it's going to get worse before it gets better.
When 3-year-old Lucas came down with the telltale blisters, his mom Trina knew they were in for a rough patch.
You should try to watch every single toy that goes into the mouth and wash hands constantly.
They tried everything to prevent little Lily from contracting it.
We did our best and she ended up getting it.
There have been a series of recently reported outbreaks of the virus across Florida.
People get very freaked out about it. I don't know, maybe it's the name, maybe because, you do get spots on your hands and feet.
This local pediatrician says you should go to the doctor if your child is dehydrated after not drinking because of mouth sores. Also, if your child has a fever at or above 104. She also says constant hand washing can be the most effective defense.
And that's the best thing you can do, is good hand washing for everybody.
This doctor says hand, foot, and mouth is so common you don't even necessarily need to isolate your kids who get it. Trina has no idea where her kids contracted the virus.
It could have been anywhere.
She's just relieved the outbreak in her home is over for now. If your child does get hand, foot, and mouth, Dr. Baker says that most kids are able to take a little bit of Benadryl and Maalox for mouth sores and Tylenol for the fever.
A group of around 15 to 20 experts in areas such as disease control, virology and vaccine development gather from all around the world and look at the science and the spread of the disease, in this case Zika. They'll advise the Director General of the WHO whether this is just a concern for a particular country or region or whether it has significant implications for other parts of the world, making it a possible global emergency. The last time an international public health emergency was declared was during the Ebola outbreak. The WHO was criticised for being too slow to raise the alarm, but when it did, a huge international response got underway. Countries sent in medics, scientists, and even the military. Zika is very different to Ebola though, so the response is also likely to differ. Remember, Zika itself isn't considered particularly harmful to most people. It's this link to babies being born with small heads that's causing concern. It's impossible to predict what advice the experts will come up with, but they can make temporary recommendations, such as advise on travel to affected countries, on surveillance, so how to find new infections quickly, and how best to treat people. The WHO can also help fast-track the development of vaccines and cures. There are none available at the moment. The recommendations could also be about avoiding panic and advising against countries taking inappropriate and unnecessary measures.
We know that a 3-foot tsunami has been detected at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear plant. This is the plant that melted down in March of 2011, causing a catastrophic situation that coastal area in Fukushima Prefecture is still struggling to recover from more than 5 years later. So far, even though we see these pictures of pretty ominous-looking waves, they have detected no abnormalities at the Fukushima plant. It does not appear that the size of the waves, at least at this point, is going to breach the protective seawall that is in place. But if you look at these images, and they've been showing them on Japan's national broadcaster NHK, you can see these large waves, and very close to those waves are these above ground temporary water storage tanks where they're putting in all of the radioactive water that is being used to cool the crippled reactors. It's a temporary storage system. Japanese engineers haven't figured out exactly what to do with this increasingly high volume of radioactive water that is sitting very close to the Japanese coast. So if these tsunami waves in the coming hour or so prove to be larger than what we're seeing right now, that could be one potentially dangerous situation. But again, no abnormalities at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear plant right now. However, at another nuclear plant in Fukushima Prefecture, Fukushima Daini, this is a separate plant, we have just learned within the past few minutes that the cooling operation in one of the reactors has stopped. Now, when the cooling pumps stop due to loss of power or whatnot, that is the type of scenario that led to the meltdown back in 2011. But TEPCO, the operator of that other nuclear plant, says that even though the cooling operation has stopped, they do not believe there is an immediate danger because the storage tanks can keep those nuclear rods cool for up to 7 days without power. And they're hopeful and confident that they will be able to get the cooling pumps back into operation well within that time frame. But certainly for the people living in this area who are still trying to rebuild their lives after the disaster in 2011, those tsunami waves that killed 22,000 people and caused hundreds of billions of dollars in damage, this is a very ominous time and a lot of concern, and you can still see Japanese media telling coastal residents to get to higher ground immediately and evacuate just in case.
Well, right now, a warning for Southern California about the increased risk of a major earthquake. Experts say a series of small quakes along the San Andreas Fault could lead to a bigger one, and people in the area should revisit their emergency plans. This, of course, is the area of concern, as you're seeing on your screen, and it's no stranger to disaster. In 1994, the Northridge earthquake killed 57 people, injured thousands more, causing billions of dollars in property damage. Most recently, along the San Andreas Fault system, the same one we're talking about, was that earthquake in South Napa. And that happened in 2014, was a magnitude of 6.0, certainly caused a lot of damage as well. Joining us, Richard Allen, the director of Seismological Lab at UC Berkeley. Richard, it's great to have you back on the program.
Great to be with you.
You know, it's interesting to look at earthquake forecasting as we're watching a major storm on the east coast of the United States. We're all familiar with weather forecasting somewhat. Is forecasting an earthquake similar?
It's very similar in the sense that we sort of know that on any given day there's a chance of an earthquake, and we can associate a probability with that.
Breaking news is out of the Turkish capital of Ankara, where we just learned that the Russian ambassador to Turkey, Andrei Karlov, is dead. He was shot a little more than an hour ago. He was speaking at an art gallery inside the Turkish capital, shot several times. He was rushed to the hospital. And again, we did just get word that Andrei Karlov has passed away. Now, CNN just obtained video of the shooting itself. And I do want to warn you, this is very disturbing, very graphic video. We do want to play it so you get a sense of exactly what happened inside that art gallery and the horror that took place just a short time ago. But again, be warned, it is graphic. Let's watch.
All right, and now back to our top story. President-elect Trump disagreeing with U.S. intelligence agencies that believe Russia interfered in the presidential election by hacking DNC emails. The disagreement is causing a war of words between the Obama administration and the incoming Trump administration. Let's bring in our panel. Mark Lampkin served as an advisor to former House Speaker John Boehner. Brad Baumann is former executive director of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. Gentlemen, great to be with you. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having us.
Brad, it's kind of unusual. Typically, it's the Republicans yelling about Russia and the Democrats going, oh, no, we think we can make things work. And now we have exactly the opposite.
I got to tell you, there's nothing about this that is... I mean, the entire situation is completely ridiculous. At this point, the only thing that Republicans seem to be doing that resembles the way that they stood up for America in the Cold War is their response to Democrats as though we are the Cold War enemy. deny everything, level counter accusations. What Russia may have done here in terms of their interference in our election could be the most significant attack on our democracy since 9/11. And instead of all of us attacking one another, we need to actually come together, figure out what's happening, and it would be really nice for our president-elect to take this seriously.
Mark, is the president-elect not taking this seriously, or, as Sean Spicer pointed out this morning, is there a nuance here? There's a nuance of if someone did indeed hack, let's figure out who it is, but at the same time, let's not say that the hack changed the results of the election.
I mean, we are now getting our first indication as to how many ISIS fighters have been killed in Iraq and Syria. 50,000. That's the figure according to a senior U.S. military official. I want to bring in Michael Waltz now, former Green Beret commander, former counterterror advisor to Vice President Dick Cheney, author of the book Warrior Diplomat, and a Fox News contributor. Michael, good morning to you and welcome back here on America.
Hey, good morning, Bill.
It's a big number. Do you believe it?
Yeah, it is a large number, but it makes sense to me, and I don't have any reason to doubt that coming from the Pentagon. Look, Bill, we've been conducting airstrikes now for several years, over 16,000 by the Pentagon's latest count, and we've had multiple defense and intelligence officials testify that ISIS has been sending as many as 1,500 fighters per month over the last several years into Iraq and Syria. So I'm glad we've killed a lot of them, but I think there's more behind that number and still a lot of work to be done.
So on that question, then, how many more? I mean, if you've killed 50,000,
right?
How many more are there, Michael?
Well, you know, and that 50,000 also includes, and that 1,500 per month being pumped in from North Africa and the rest of the world is on top of the local Iraq and Syrian fighters that are also supporting ISIS. So, you know, who knows how many is behind that number. You know, at the end of the day, my kind of definition of victory is when the enemy can't recruit anymore because we've dismantled their ideology and their leadership.
No.
It is slow going for the Iraqi army in its effort to recapture Mosul. Senior Foreign Affairs correspondent Greg Palcott tells us perhaps even slower than we thought.
More than 6 weeks into efforts to get ISIS out of the Iraqi city of Mosul, and the fight is not looking any easier. Just 20% of Mosul so far has been freed of the militants by Iraqi forces backed by U.S. airstrikes and support, according to the U.S. coalition spokesman in Baghdad.
The Iraqi security forces are working very hard to get this done, but they're up against a fanatical enemy, very dangerous fighting in the streets.
Making things more complicated, the million-plus residents of Mosul thought to still be in the city. Some are being executed by ISIS, many more being used as human shields. And they are suffering. Along with shortages of food and medicine, clashes have knocked out clean drinking water for over 500,000.
We have nothing. No running water and no electricity. We've not had water for almost 20 days.
75,000 have, in fact, fled the fighting in Mosul. Some officials reportedly now regretting the decision to tell residents there to remain in their homes during the battle.
We are facing a humanitarian catastrophe if the problem is not solved as soon as possible.
As the casualties mount among civilians and military, all of this adding urgency to get the job done. A route leading west from the city to ISIS-held ground in Syria is now cut off, along with key bridges in the city as forces move in from the northeast and south. The number of car bombs is down. Militant casualties are up.
The Iraqi security forces have completely encircled the city from all sides. There is no real avenue of egress for the enemy. So they are largely going to be destroyed in place.
The question is, how long will it take to get ISIS out of Mosul? Colonel Dorian would not commit to a time frame, simply alluding to the fact that it could take several months, maybe bloody months. Brett.
Greg, thank you.
Now, Queenslanders from as far south as Hervey Bay to as far north as Yeppoon are scratching their heads this morning. They're baffled after seeing a bright flash of light in the sky overnight. Let's get to the bottom of this mystery and go to Nine's Phil Wilmington in Gladstone. Phil, what do we know?
Well, I don't know if I can help you much here, Sylvia. Some of the people I've been speaking to here in Gladstone, we only just flew in this morning, Some of them thought it was an earthquake. That was the initial thought, but it's amazing actually all the way up and down the coast, as you alluded to. It was a big stretch of the coast where this event was actually noticed. The story was remarkably similar. A flash of light in the sky. Some people then reported a bang or an explosion of some sort. And then the most common theme we've seen or heard is that houses were shaking and there was a real rumble in the ground. Certainly a bus driver I spoke to at the airport this morning, he said he was watching television here in Gladstone last night and he felt his house shake and heard things rumble. So something was definitely going on. Now, Australian scientists have definitely ruled out an earthquake because they did have one of those here, a minor tremor last year. Definitely not an earthquake. A German astrophysicist is suggesting it's definitely not a comet, because if that was the case, Queensland wouldn't be here anymore. He's suggesting it was a meteor, and he's saying something like a rock about a metre across. So down south of here at Tannum Sands, we're told a lot of people witnessed this event, so we're heading down there very shortly. And if we find out some more clues, Sylvia, I'll let you know.
Anyone can explain the inexplicable. It is you, Phil Wilmington. I'm sure of that. Thank you very much.
Those cards are still here in North Texas tonight, along with dozens of disappointed children. Good evening, everyone. I'm Natalie Solis.
And I'm Steve Eager. It's 9 o'clock. The hang-up here with those cards is a VA policy against specific religious phrasing. Calvin Collins, first on Fox 4 News at 99 at Grace Academy in Prosper to explain. Calvin.
Well, Steve, these kids thought they would be getting to retell their stories, their first time visiting the VA, getting to meet and thank and give Christmas cards to those veterans. But that's not happening because of a miscommunication in the VA's policy.
I'm hoping that it would make their day because a lot of their family might live far away, and so they might not have somebody to celebrate Christmas with.
Fourth grader Gracie Brown and her brother Luke put a lot of thought and effort into their Christmas cards.
It included Merry Christmas, and when you open it up, it says, "Thank you for your service," and the American flag.
52 students at Grace Academy in Prosper spent Friday morning making these cards.
I hope you have a blessed holiday.
They planned to hand deliver to bedridden veterans at the VA hospital in Dallas this morning. When Gracie and Luke's mom found out they wouldn't be able to, she was outraged.
This wasn't the country that I grew up in, that you couldn't say Merry Christmas. So we found out not only could you not say Merry Christmas, you couldn't say God bless you in a card, and you couldn't reference any scripture.
Get better, feel well soon.
The cards were the idea of Susan Chapman, a math teacher at Grace Academy. She's married to a veteran and volunteers with the American Legion and other veterans organizations.
It didn't occur to me. I just really didn't think that there would be a problem with distributing Christmas cards.
She didn't find out about the VA's holiday card policy until she called this morning to arrange details for the card's delivery.
And I told him my students have made cards, we'd like to bring them down for the veterans. And he said, you know, that's great. We're thrilled to have them, except the only thing is we can't accept any cards that say Merry Christmas or God bless you or any scriptural references, just because of all the red tape.
And teaching Satanism in schools sounds like the stuff of horror movies, but a US court ruling on religious freedoms has enabled devil worshippers in Florida to hand out educational material about their beliefs to kids at state schools. Rena Portnaya has this report.
Public education in America often uses coloring books to teach young Americans about math, science, and current events. This year, a new book filled with games and lessons about Satanism could be distributed to students attending public school in Florida's Orange County. The 10-page Satanic Children's Big Book of Activities features characters named Annabelle and Damien who demonstrate rituals to explain Satanism. This expanding wealth of information for America's young minds was made possible after a Florida judge last month ruled that if the Orange County School District allowed Christian groups to disseminate Bibles and other materials in its schools, then other religious and atheist groups should be given the same right to distribute their material. and followers of the Antichrist seized on the decision to treat all faiths equally. A spokesman for the Satanic Temple tells Raw Story that, quote, if a public school board is going to allow religious pamphlets and full Bibles to be distributed to students, as is the case in Orange County, Florida, we think the responsible thing to do is to ensure that these students are given access to a variety of different religious opinions, as opposed to standing idly by while one religious voice dominates the discourse and delivers propaganda to youth, unquote. In a ruling that was aimed at maintaining religious neutrality, students who may never have intended to learn about Christianity, atheism, or Satanism will now receive an introduction to all three. Marina Portnaya, RT.